All right, so welcome to episode 1 of the IGA podcast, one that asks real public opinions on everyday events. In a world where public opinion is being cancelled and shut down at every turn, the main goal here is to challenge the cancel culture and reopen the difficult and possibly unpopular conversations. Guests on this podcast will not be censored, but may be challenged on opposing ideas. And who knows, we could learn just enough about each other to bring us back together as people. Now, to start off this podcast, I'd like to introduce a guest that we're having on the show to kick off what we're about. Here we have Alan, who comes from New York. Alan, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Ian. Thanks for having me on, man. Pilot episode. I'm excited.
Excellent. I'm so glad to have you join us. I really am. I think we've hit the jackpot having you on here, because ideally we wanted public opinion from the UK, and you were the first to come to us with an opinion or to voice your opinion, and you're actually in the US, and I think it'll be a great contrasting debate here.
Not debate, but I'm going to enjoy the conversation, definitely.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself first. Like, how were things in New York? What do you get up to? What's your life like?
So life has changed a lot here for us. So I'm a 36-year-old. I have a doctorate in physical therapy. I have my own practice. And things have been slowly, about back in March, that's when everything was starting to shut down via COVID. You know, I remember the night I was out with friends and the basketball player from the Utah Jazz tested positive on like a Tuesday night. And that was it. They were like, we're canceling everything, all games. That's when New York City started to shut down. Of course, we were one of the first to really put rules in place. And then we became the epicenter. And till this day, I mean, things are better here, but the buildings are half empty. Everybody's fled to their summer homes or to their parents' homes, and everything is very empty. So that's when everybody started to take precaution. And I kept running my business because I have a small space. I see my patients one at a time, and everything was going fine until one Saturday night, and I just didn't feel so great. You know, you're not feeling great. And I went to bed that night and I woke up the next morning with 102-degree fever. Yeah. I was 2 days of fever. I was fatigued for a couple of weeks, and I had that annoying, that little cough. But I didn't have any lung things. I'm young, I'm healthy, I run, and I basically had to shut down. And for at least 2 months, I wasn't doing a single thing business-related, trying to collect some type of unemployment, which was a total shit show, so to speak. And things are started to get back. You know, we're doing the phases here in the States. I don't know if you guys have that in the UK. And you know what? It changes on a daily basis. Because we're going back to 2, we're going to 3. There are gyms are included, gyms are not included. You can eat inside in, one state, and then two miles later, you can't eat inside. And things here are so chaotic because you have the states that all have their mayors, their governors, and then you have a president that is also kind of living by their own rules right now. And it's just a total mess over here. And it was funny because, 3 weeks ago, 2,000 new COVID cases, and that set a record. Hold my beer, 70,000 cases yesterday.
Wow.
Now some people say that they're being overprescribed, overdiagnosed because the hospitals are getting reimbursed more. If you check off the COVID box, you broke your toe, the hospitals get paid more for that.
So there's an incentive for them to say it's COVID.
Exactly, and that's where you're hearing, maybe you're hearing or not, is the president is coming out and being like, a lot of these cases aren't even real cases, and if we don't test as much, because his famous line was, if we stop testing, the numbers will stop going up.
I remember hearing that.
It was idiotic, but the truth is he's a little right because it is getting overprescribed, but you also have people like me who I had it. I mean, I did. Because my patient that I saw that Saturday morning, she got sick Saturday night. We've gone through the whole thing together pretty much, and she's a little older. She got tested, she had it, I had it. I'm going with the theory right now of when your mate gets tested for different diseases and they come up clean. Well, it's like, all right, well, I'm clean. So I'm still being precautious with everything that I'm doing. But in New York City, which is a very, very liberal state, masks have become a focal point of life. And you had people, just the other day, I was walking down the street, somebody wasn't wearing a mask, another person looked at him and said, hey buddy, where's your mask? And the guy leaned over and coughed in his face. Nice. It turned into this minor little, you're an asshole. And it's like, okay, whatever. Nothing became of it. They were both way too old to be getting into fisticuffs. But masks now, if you're not wearing a mask, somebody will say something to you without a doubt.
So is it mandatory where you are to wear a mask?
I don't think it's become mandatory. There are signs everywhere on the subways. There are signs in elevators. I live in a building that has sent things out. I've heard places are giving fines, not here in New York City, but it has turned into like you should be doing it. But the cops here right now, everybody's so afraid of getting sick that, in New York City, I don't know if you've ever been here, but you can get away with a lot, like jaywalking, you can drink outside. Cops are just not going to waste their time and energy for minor little infractions, which it's a good thing and a bad thing. But right now, you'll have more public opinion of people in New York City. Everybody's very outspoken to yell at anybody for anything, to say, where's your mask? What are you doing? But it's not mandatory, I don't believe.
So go back to where you said where you had COVID yourself.
Okay.
What was that actually like? Because I don't know a single person directly who has had it and experienced it. Yet we hear on the news constantly about how many people have died, how bad it is, everybody's getting it. Yeah, I don't know a single person. I've even got... So I live in Wales. I don't know how well you know the UK.
I know Wales is the dragon on the flag, which is the best flag.
As long as you know the dragon, you're fine. You're fine. You can pass here.
House Targaryen, Wales, two best flags.
My new favourite person.
Well, so you got the UK. I have family that live near London, so towards the bottom of the UK, and I actually live in Wales, which is you go up towards the middle and across to, I don't know, east or west really, so to the left. So we're quite far apart. I speak to my sister and I haven't heard her mention anyone has got it. I haven't heard her mention she's had it, anyone in her family. I don't know anyone locally to me that's had it. So what was it actually like? What were the symptoms? How bad was it? How long did it last?
Right. So for me, I'm young and healthy, and I was actually going on runs every day. And at least what we're finding out right now is being healthy as far as your lungs and getting vitamin D. They've been doing some studies. Of course, that's like, you come out of the winter and everybody's vitamin D deficient. But I was going on runs, one, to get exercise because I was putting on the COVID-19, just sitting around and eating all day. So I think I had a very light case of it, but of course, they're still finding people that get it and have no symptoms. But I had no lung issues, and I haven't had the COVID feet. I haven't had any rashes or anything.
COVID
but
feet?
For me, oh yeah, it's like a toe thing. There's
I've not heard of that one. What's going on there?
I'm not even so sure myself, but people start to get foot issues with it. There's like 9 or 10 different things that you can get that might be related to it. I think it's just people not knowing what even is COVID and everything that happens with it. So for me, I didn't have any lung issues, but I had 102-degree fever for 2 days, which I'm a huge baby, so I'll just drink water, try to eat some crackers, and sleep it off. Just take Tylenol, and then I started to get back up, and I was just very lethargic, very fatigued for a couple of days. But I know a couple of people that have had light cases, and I do know a couple of people that have passed away from it being older, because I think they're now saying, over a certain age. They're saying if you have any pre-existing comorbidities, it kind of feels like the unhealthier you are, the more likely it is to affect you. But they're still finding people right now who had no symptoms at all ever, and they had it. They've gotten rid of it. It's just there's so much that we don't know about this. So in New York City, we're taking all the proper precautions. At least we're trying to do this. Okay. The interesting thing you find is it's turned almost into a political thing. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about this as maybe a good segue, but, I grew up in a split household. I grew up in a household where my father is a Republican, and he was always, it wasn't conservative versus liberal, because he's Republican, my mom is Democratic. It was always like rich versus poor. And if that's your issue, if that's what you care about, that's how it goes. So the big ones that we've always found here, at least in New York, is how you feel about pro-life versus pro-choice, which it's very easy to know which one goes which. You have gay rights, which tends to fall in there. And then you start into guns. Those tend to be the 3 big ones. And I grew up in a household where, truthfully, my father just wanted his taxes lower. But as things have progressed on, I now find that being on the right means you are pro-guns. Because if you want to be on that team, you have to be pro-guns. If you want to be on the right, you have to be anti-gay. And you have to be pro-life. And we're starting to see here a lot in New York City, at least, wearing a mask tends to be the left. It
Right.
tends to be the liberal. It tends to be the people that are caring about people versus caring about money. But you will see people with the Make America Great, the MAGA, the silly red hats.
Yeah.
They will never be wearing a mask. They have adopted this. The president says we don't have to wear a mask. He doesn't wear a mask. I'm not wearing a mask.
Yeah.
So
you'd say the whole mask situation isn't about public health, it's more about politics.
I do believe we've gotten to that point. And it's one of those things, like I saw a great video yesterday with, Bill Nye, the science guy. I don't know if he makes it. So he put out this thing where he was just showing, like, he couldn't blow out a candle from 6 inches away from wearing a mask. And he was like, look, and he kept blowing and blowing. He's like, that's what these masks do.
Yeah.
Why would you not wear it? It's like one of those, you ever have anything in your life where you're like, I'm just going to do it just in case. Like I know people who don't believe in God, but they'll say, God bless you. And it's like, well, you don't believe in God. It's like, well,
for
just
God's
in
sake,
case there's
and stuff like that.
For God's sakes, right? If your mother was ever, you're agnostic, you're atheist, if your mother was ever sick, would you pray? They go, yeah, well, just in case there's a God, I might as well. So people are starting to feel that way about masks. I don't think it works that way. I personally have had it already. I believe that I can't give it or get it, but I still wear a mask out of respect to other people.
Where do you wear your mask? Where do you wear it? Do you wear it outdoors? Do you wear it just when you go into buildings?
The second I leave my front door and get into an elevator, go downstairs, a mask is on my face until I get wherever I am. So if it's a restaurant, you have to have your mask on until you are sitting down at your table to eat. If I'm going to a friend's house, I keep it on until, and I'm not going to a lot of friends' houses these days, but I keep it on until I am through a front door. That mask is on. I exercise, I run. It gets difficult because you're sucking wind back and forth, but right now, the unofficial policy, because it's not written anywhere, is to have a mask on the second you leave your house.
Because over here we're having the big debate now, where all over the news yesterday, I believe it sounded like Boris Johnson was going to come out with a statement saying whether we're going to be wearing masks mandatorily or not. And in the end, what came out was, maybe. It didn't really happen, which has kind of been the theme along the way. It was kind of, we're going to lockdown, kind of. We'd like you to stay in your house. It was that kind of thing. And now we're going to open, sort of. A couple of businesses were open, but not many. But you can't have many people in, which I think that whole thing is worse than either keeping closed or just opening. Because if you're doing it, the point is, at the beginning, when they were shutting down all the businesses, and one of the big ones was the pubs and the bars and things like that, and they first came out and said, the government said, we're not shutting them down, but we advise you don't go to them. Now, by doing that, you're killing the business. That business is going to suffer so badly because they have to stay open, but their customers are being told to stay away. So in the end, now this could be a very unpopular opinion here. There's a gentleman who owns the Wetherspoons chain of businesses, which is a chain of pubs / restaurants. He said he was going to stay open, and he told everybody to come out, which was going against guidelines. Now everybody had a go at him about it, and there's a boycott or attempted boycott now. But I feel like I almost want to defend him just for the fact that he was put into a horrible position. They could have crippled his business and made him go bust. And by doing that, where he said everybody come out and then it looked like they were going to, he forced the government to actually turn around and say, okay, no, we're actually going to make you close and we're going to furlough everyone. Because it didn't look like they were going to do it. And it was only when the big boys and normally you don't want big companies stepping in and getting involved in politics. That's not what you want, because then you feel like, they're paying for certain things to happen.
Wait, they do that already behind the scenes. We're just not allowed to know about it.
Oh, yeah. It's just that the curtain is down for a long time and we didn't really see much of it, but it's coming up slowly. But by him doing that, it was almost, I found, quite respectable. Although it seems like he's putting the public at risk, it was actually the government that were putting businesses and the public at risk by not committing to a particular message, in a way.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you could take, and I've heard people take the strong stance of, we need to do this. I don't know if they still do it. I don't watch it, but like our governor, what's his name, Cuomo, every night or every day and he comes on and he says this and he does this, and Trump was also doing their daily things, and all all the governors and mayors right now, in my opinion, are campaigning for where they want to be in the next 4 years, but they're making these hard stances, and then they're finding out that some of the stuff they're saying is wrong. But to teeter-totter in the middle with we don't know, that's not the way to go either. I mean, here in New York, I forget which stage it was, but we actually, and I still to this day say the best thing to come out of this is bars have opened up, but only for curbside service. So you can walk up to a bar, happy hour, and get a to-go whatever you want, and you're allowed to walk around the neighborhood, and it has been really fun.
So now you're allowed to drink on the street, whereas before it was kind of frowned upon or told you couldn't do it. Because we've got that similar here now, and I always thought we weren't allowed to drink on the street.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I play, slow pitch casual softball. We're always drinking on the sidelines, and we have cops come to the fields, and they look at us and they go, "You need to have a paper bag or have it in a red cup, because I don't know what's in those. But if I see you drinking out of a can, you're in trouble."
If I see that label on it, I know what you're drinking. But if I can't see it, who knows what's going on behind there?
Exactly. It's not worth their time. But so we are at the stage 2 or 3 right now. I think we're right in between. Maybe tomorrow might be the opening of stage 3. But restaurants are having tables outside, which is weird because you feel like you're eating in the alley. But as far as the bars, they are open for curbside service. And so like a couple weeks ago, my girlfriend and I, we went out, we got a margarita, and then we're walking down the street. But even with the rules, like you say, they're so undefined. Because one bar says, we can't sell you alcohol without selling you food. I said, I'm not hungry. The lady looks at me and goes, I have $1 bag of tortilla chips, wink, wink. So I said, yeah, I'll take that, clearly. But then I've gone to other places where they're like, here you go, take whatever you want. They got to make their money, and you have to respect that. But things are changing so much, and we had the protests here really bad, and there's a lot of restaurants that are still boarded up, and we're not sure if they're boarded up for safety or they're boarded up because they're not coming back. Right. And one of the lines that Trump came out and said, which was kind of clever, but he said all restaurants will reopen. They just might have different names in front of them.
Yeah,
it's like come on, man, like that's a cheap shot.
It is. Do you know what it is? But at the same time, myself and Adrian, we had a discussion about it, because Adrian's always wanted to open up a little like B&B or Airbnb, that type of place. And I said to her, well, if there was a time to do it, it's kind of at the end of this, because there's going to be a lot of people that are going to have to get rid of this. They can't afford it because, unfortunately, because it's killed their business. They can't afford to keep it going and can't afford to put any more money in. Whereas other people that might have a little bit of money spare can now invest into something like that at the bottom end and maybe bring it up. So as horrible as his comment was, it's kind of right in a way.
In some ways, and I'm a big fan of that. I've had my own business for a while, but I'm the biggest fan of people taking a chance and failing rather than talking about something, but trying to find a pivot during this time, which, like I started my own podcast and I do my own thing, because anybody who wants to do anything right now, it's trying to find that little knickknack. Like I have friends that are investing money right now in Zoom, the company, because they're like, Zoom, that's going to be the future of this. It's like, okay, find the pivot, find what people want. Like Airbnb was not a business. Airbnb was a concept.
Yeah.
And then somebody said, I can turn this into a business. And I have a friend who's in a think tank, and he's always working on find something that people didn't know they need, and that's where you go from there. So, but the financially right now, we have something here in the States where we get unemployment right now, which is, I don't know, every state's different, but it can be anywhere from $400 to $600 per month. So I guess for you guys, it's like maybe 300 to 500 pounds or something like that. And now they have something called the CARES Act, CARES. I don't even know if it stands anything. It's an additional $600 a week. So you went from, oh my goodness, I might not be able to survive on this, to getting a couple $1,000s or even a couple £1,000 per month. And that can keep you afloat, except that ends in New York City July 31st.
Okay.
So that is the reason that there are people saying, like my dentist the other day, she said, I can't get people to come in and work right now because they'd rather stay at home because they're making more money or similar enough that they don't want to work. So you have the people on the right saying, we got to get people back to work right now because this extra money is just giving them incentives to stay at home right now.
Yeah.
And so that's been some of the money. And then you guys know we got these stimulus checks. Did they tell you about that?
Yeah. Do you have to pay those back, I'm guessing?
No. So there's loans that you have to pay back, but a stimulus check was, if you make less than, I want to say it's like $70,000 or something in there, you get $1,200 US American dollars. And every 1,000 or so you make per year, going by last year's taxes, they start deducting money from that until eventually you're down to nothing. So that was this $1,200. We call them Trump bucks, which is because you get a letter in the mail signed, "Sincerely, Donald J. Trump."
Your hero.
And some people's hero, some people love him. And they gave one of those out. And you know what? That was great. It was beautiful. Do you know what rent is over here for a tiny one? I mean, you get a tiny studio in Manhattan. $1,200 doesn't cover the rent, let alone anything else for 1 month. We had one round of these stimulus checks. Things are going to get bad here. When all the money starts to dry up, that's when the shit is really going to hit the fan. And I know people that are getting worried about. I know somebody who put in an alarm system in their apartment because they're worried that it's going to turn into, Mad Max. People just breaking into and stealing things, and
I mean,
you don't know.
Well, that's it, isn't it? You don't know. Everyone's got this idea of what's going to happen, how things are going to turn, but it's actually very much the same here. If you go to London and you try and get a flat up there, oh my God, I've seen adverts for flats for thousands of pounds a month, and it's the tiniest box you've ever seen. And when I speak to my sister as well, she lives in Essex, which is a fairly affluent area, depending where you are. The price of her monthly rent for a smaller house, and she pays more. It's just ridiculous, and we get so much space. You get the views, you get the space here, and because we're in a rural area, so we do quite nicely. But there's not as much money in this area, and especially as this is a holiday island. So I live on a little island called Anglesey. It's very much holiday. So because all the attractions and everything, beaches have been closed, and all the rest of it, this whole area suffered in that way because we don't have high street shops like they do in the city centres. They reopen, they can do a little bit. We can't do anything really. We're sort of just sat here waiting. But we do have the lowest numbers as opposed to England.
Well, you're being way more secluded. I mean, we still don't. I've been taking the subway here in New York City the whole time, and there's many days you're the only one on the cart. I mean, there's the only one on the train. And then there's other days now, like here's something I don't know if you guys know, but the buses we have here, they have put, normally you get on the front of the bus, you swipe your Metro card, whatever it is, and then you walk past the driver, you go back to the back. Well, they've changed that now here, that they put a plastic shield between the first seat and the driver, and you get in through the back of the bus and don't have to pay for it right now, which is great to keep the driver safe, except there's no social distancing in the back of you're just passing through everybody. Everybody's super close to each other. Yeah. So there's something nice about this, and we're still figuring out, the herd immunity, which is defined as 70% of everybody having it. And this could go on forever, or, I mean, not forever, that's ridiculous. But something's got to give, and we just don't know enough about it. And, here in America, sports are huge here, and we have so many sports. So football, American football drives the bus, and the seasons are starting soon. They've already had camps open up, and college football to some places in the States here, specifically in the South. You go to a southern state in the U.S., you open up the newspaper for sports, you'll have to go through 9 pages of college football before you get to, oh yeah, other things happen in this world. Yep. So when it comes to the big schools, the Alabamas, the Tennessees, the Mississippi, they already have practices going on, and there's conspiracy theory out there that the coaches are basically trying to get their players infected, so when the season starts, they won't have to worry about it.
That's a view, isn't it? I mean, if they think their players could be safer, because obviously they're part of the healthiest part of your country, really. If they're the healthiest people going, and they think, well, they won't be as affected. We've seen who it's affected, who it's killed off. Our players should be all right. But they might
It's been brought up, yeah.
That might tie into, because we've just had a question as well coming from Anne. I know. People are actually watching this. So,
oh my goodness.
So Anne's asked, how do you feel Trump is dealing with the crisis? Which might tie into what you were just alluding to as to what direction he's going in, like herd immunity and whatnot. How is he dealing with it as a whole? What's he doing that? Actually, what might be a good thing, how's he dealing with it in certain segments? Like, what's he doing that's good here? What's he doing that's bad? Is it all bad, as a lot of us are seeing? Is it all good, majority good? Is that what people don't want to hear but could be true?
No, nobody ever wants to talk about anything that he's done good in the world. I have patients who walk through my front door and I say, oh, hey, Mrs. Smith, how was your weekend? It was horrible, Alan. Well, why? Because he's still breathing. I'm like, oh my God, wow. Like that is, oh, no. Here in Manhattan, you have people that really, They've called it Trump derangement syndrome. And I have patients who sit around and mumble, "Oh, God damn, I hate him so much." They hate him so much. Now, what he's doing good, because I don't hate him that much. I don't feel anybody should be hated that much. He's taking some of the fear down, because if you go on, and here in America, most people either watch or read Fox News, which tends to be the right, or they're more into CNN or MSNBC, which tends to be more on the left. So if you just sit around, they call it fear mongering, and he does a good job of at least trying to diffuse everything, but at the same time, things are getting worse and worse. And when you hear people, so Pence now, the vice president, he's going around wearing a mask because he's had some Secret Service agents get sick, and they've had to change their plans. But Trump is going with "it can't get me, I'll be okay," which is helping. Yeah. But at the same time, he's a 70-plus man who is extremely overweight and unhealthy.
It's true.
I'm surprised he's not more worried himself.
There were rumours at one point, I think it was quite early on, that he wasn't doing an appearance or something, and there was rumours that he had it. But then those rumours were kind of quelled because in our news, Boris Johnson had it.
Did he? Wait, so Boris Johnson did have it, right?
Apparently he had it. I mean, we don't know. I don't know what goes on behind the scenes because he disappeared, didn't he? But yeah, apparently he had it. But the funny... Now, you said something to me the other day, and you said Boris Johnson... Didn't you say something like, who would have thunk it that Boris Johnson would look like a genius or something?
So, yeah, because I don't know a ton about British politics or Boris Johnson. All I know is when I spoke to a Brit, I guess last year or the year before, they showed me a picture of this guy who desperately needs a hairdresser. I mean, I thought Trump had bad hair. Boris Johnson makes Trump look like a model.
It's like he comes out and just goes, yeah, that'll do.
He reminds me so much. I mean, the memes online of Jeff Daniels from Dumb and Dumber, where he just has this ridiculous blonde hair. Yeah, he looks ridiculous. Yeah. And then when you start hearing some stories about him, Boris Johnson kind of comes off seeming a little, maybe silly is the right word, because I don't think he's dumb. He just comes off like silly and goofy, which, I want my bakers to make bread. I want my politicians to be straightforward and straight shooting.
You are not in that position by accident or because you're stupid. He managed to get him. You have to angle your way to that kind of position, and he's managed to do it. He's not stupid. As much as he tries to play on this and how it looks, he's not.
Right. So we heard, at least I heard checking the news, that I guess I'll say when you ask about Trump, I don't think that Americans, I have heard stories that there are some Americans that think that COVID is made up. Like they're like, oh, this is fake news. This isn't even a real thing. I have read, at least heard, that people in where you're living are taking it a lot more seriously. And, you read about some of the lockdowns and how, I guess I didn't know that Boris Johnson was kind of wishy-washy on it, because at least I read something that he was trying to come out more like, because Trump is just basically just saying, like, this is not a thing. Like, everybody needs to relax, get back to work. The economy is suffering. And there are people out there that believe because it's like you ever see the movie Fight Club? I always use this analogy with the opening scene with the explosion, and Ed Norton goes in and goes, "It's my job to determine if a recall on the product will cost more money than the wrongful death lawsuits." And there are people right now, specifically on the right, and I think this is where Trump is going, poverty and the economy collapsing will cause more deaths than COVID itself. And the Depression showed that back.
Weigh it up.
Exactly. So that might be more where he's coming from. But like I said, I heard that in the UK, you guys were just taking it more seriously. And people here, I mean, there's stuff online right now of people, like I told you a story about somebody coughing on somebody. This is every week you see this. It's like, hey, you know the term Karen? That's the big one these days. Hey, Karen, you're not wearing a mask.
This is a bad time for Karens, I have to admit.
You know what, though? I will never call somebody that whose name is Karen. But every Karen I've ever met is a Karen. It holds true.
I know one Karen. I don't know her well enough to say that, so I'll refrain from using that just in case she's listening and she might take offence to that one.
I don't know her, so I can say it. But the Karen,
you say what you like. I can't. I've already said I won't censor you, so you say what you like.
Well, I would never speak illy on somebody I don't know, but if I met her and she was a Karen, I would definitely be like, "Hey, Karen, stop being a Karen."
I heard, but was it here or is it in America? I've heard there's some sort of act or something that's been passed that is called the Karen Act.
I think it's here.
Is it here? Yeah, there's a Karen Act that's been passed, And it's
What does
hilarious.
that mean?
Oh, man, I want to find this.
Oh, wow.
Actually, Adrian's going to have a look for that now. It
Okay.
is genius. I heard this the other day, and it's something about. Actually, it might be America by the sounds of what it is. It's if it's aimed at basically white privilege in a way, where if somebody was to call the police on somebody from an ethnic group, you would be charged with something.
Good.
Yeah, which is right, but they've called it the Karen Act, and it's a play on the whole Karen thing. And I think it's genius.
I mean, I think that's pretty good. It just still surprises me because we're still, Black Lives Matter is so big right now, and I am not racist. I don't even use some of the words that I've ever heard. But at the same time, you still get these stories because it's saying all lives matter is wrong, and you can't say that. And I mean, I'm into peace. Like, for me, I always give a kiss, give a peace sign. I am so into, I just wish, can't we all just get along? But you still have videos. I saw one yesterday, I think it was on TMZ, of a lady who was getting ready to get on a bus, an African-American lady, and she puts a mask on, and then her and this other woman start getting into a verbal thing, and she looks at her and she says, oh, because now this gets back to the mask theory. She looks at this African-American lady, she goes, oh, such a good little slave, just listening to the rules. And the lady takes her phone out. This is online, you can find it, and she goes, you're going to call me a slave? And she goes, well, yeah, because you're following the rules and doing this. And she goes, don't you think there's other words that you could use to a woman of color? And she goes, well, I'm Mexican. She goes, it doesn't even matter what you are. You don't say certain things to certain people. It just, so on my podcast, I did for July 4th, I did this whole British intro. And I tried to sound British, and I'm not going to do it for you because you would tear my accent apart. And I made this joke about...
I want to hear that. You've said it now, I want to hear it.
Oh, good day, you cheeky monkeys. I'm so excited. I'm quite excited to see you today, July 4th, here in America.
Like
Adrian, can we cut him off? Can we...
Sounds like Russell Brand.
Yeah, you sound like Russell Brand. That was a good take on him. You just needed the crazy hair with it.
Oh, that guy, I love him. I miss him. But so I did that, and I always try to take the title of the title of my show is something that I said, and I turned to my friend who's a co-host, and I said, "Can we call this episode the Cheeky Monkey July 4th episode?" And she looks at me and goes, "I don't think you should use the word monkey right now. Things are too hot." I said, "Oh, come on!" And she goes, "Is it worth risking that somebody misinterprets what you mean?" And I went, "You know what? You're right." You're right.
It's that. That's what's worrying, is where somebody says, is it too risky to use that word or that phrase?
It is.
What will you risk? What would you risk by doing that?
I would risk somebody calling me because, like you've mentioned about cancel culture.
Mm-hmm.
And cancel culture, and the best line about it is, judge my intent, not my words.
Okay.
Now, had I gone on with that phrase, like you remember Roseanne, she got into a bunch of trouble for saying she was engaging with somebody online, and she said something about, I think she actually said monkey too. You can't say that to somebody of color because of the racist connotation that it has.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, if it has an allusion, if you allude to it, you just can't do that. And you have to be careful with your words. And I would have risked, all 60 listeners of my booming podcast, so maybe somebody comes out and says you're racist. And you have people right now, my girlfriend loves the YouTube people, which I think is a waste of time. And you're having a bunch of them right now on TikTok, on YouTube, where, blackface is coming out.
Yeah.
And they did that 6 years ago. It didn't matter how silly they were, but that's it. You're done. And the 3 million subscribers that you have, nobody cares about you anymore. And you just can't do it. There's things you can't say, and there's things you can't have done. And I'm lucky that I grew up when Facebook, or dare I say the Facebook, because I was in school when it first came out. It was thefacebook.com. I was a junior in college. And I'm not at that idiot stage of being a 14-year-old where we're having professional athletes right now. They tweeted some line to some rap song when they were a child, and now it's like, that guy's racist. Can't be friends with him. And it's getting really bad, and you are at risk of saying, now, I do this for a living. I talk all day, every day, in addition to being a doctor. You have to be careful what you say, how you say it, and I can still put my foot in my mouth every now and then by coming out and taking a stance on something, and it just rubs somebody the wrong way. And you lose them as a friend, as a listener, as a patient. It happens.
Well, see, it's harder in a position like you might be in, because you're in a position where you could be just fired. Because you'll bring a company or a certain profession into disrepute, they don't want to deal with you, you're gone. Now that's understandable, but the other thing is, I feel the other side of it, like you said, YouTubers, that seems to be more motivated by money just for the fact that if they lose viewers, they lose money, they don't get the referrals and whatnot. I just don't feel like it should be about that. I don't understand why you can't say something. And if you are wrong, if you did say something and it was, I'd rather know that somebody thinks or feels a certain way than them keeping it to themselves. And I am friends with that person for a long time. And then you suddenly, they do or say something and you're just like, whoa, where did that come from? I'd rather know who these people are. Because I feel like as well, if you sign, because you talk about the Black Lives Matter movement, they're talking about freedom. Well, you need to be able to have freedom of speech still. Because if you don't give people freedom of speech and if you say something to me and I disagree with you and I say, no, you can't say that, you're not allowed to say that, that could make somebody go underground, or a movement happen underground that becomes very dangerous.
It could be, but until we have radar detectors where we know what people think and feel, I think what we're going with now is you just don't want to offend people. And here we just had this past week, which is a big thing. Like I'm Jewish, and I always say I'm Jewish. I don't keep kosher. I don't do all that other stuff. You wouldn't know it unless you really talk. But we had this past week a famous American football player. He tweeted a picture of some book, some saying about Israel and Black Israelites and that, and it was a direct quote from Adolf Hitler. And that has been the big topic this week here, because he did this, and now he's had to go on his apology tour. And I think the team that has him, the Philadelphia Eagles, they came out and said, we've punished him, and that's all there's ever going to be. Okay. Because he went ahead and he did this, and I think he sat down with a Holocaust survivor and had to talk to him about what it was.
So he had to do some promo work to work on the image again.
He did, and his image won't really suffer, yet the same exact team about 5-6 years ago had a video go viral of this other guy named Riley Cooper at a country festival, used the N-word. He got in all types of trouble and then signed a 5-year, $70 million contract the next year.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's very weird because, here we have our amendments and freedom of speech, which I love and I cherish, kind of like you're saying. Stand-up comedy, which is one of my favorite things. In Canada, you can't do stand-up comedy. You say something that's offensive, you can get sued for saying it, which is absurd. But here in America, the idea is you don't want to offend people either. You have to be careful whose feet you step on, because it can be really offensive, and you could be canceled just like that. And at least for me where I am, I kind of adopt if it's too close to the lines, if you're not really passionate about something, just back off. There's no reason to get into it. And I looked up what you were talking about with the Wayfair, what they were selling. I looked into that. Whether that is a coincidence, whether it's a conspiracy, the fact that company is selling products that are using the names of possible abducted kids, that's what you were referring to, right? The child trafficking. Yeah. That is ridiculous. That, it's one of those things that serves no point. Like, it serves 0 point to it.
And for anyone that doesn't know about this, what you just alluded to there, which is the Wayfair conspiracy, is it's come out that wardrobes, cushions, curtains, things like that, was selling on Wayfair for about $10,000 to $15,000 each, and each one of these items had the same picture. It wasn't similar. It was the same picture, no difference between them. They had different names on them, but they were the names of missing children from different areas of the US. Now, people have called this out as a conspiracy. They're selling kids, and there's now memes coming out about it. Now, I don't know enough about it to say, that's too much. It's true. There's not enough coming out yet. But the fact that it's coming out around the time that the whole Epstein thing has happened, now what's her name that's been arrested now?
Ghislaine Maxwell, something. I can spell it. I don't know if I can say it.
I mean, apparently she's coming out and saying she's got tapes, and so she knows the people. She knows she's got all sorts of evidence. Which, if all this is true, the whole child trafficking thing with Epstein and that, why wouldn't he have this information? Why wouldn't he have stored stuff away for when shit hits the fan? It's
I don't think he's the. I mean, I've watched the documentary, the Netflix thing. I don't think he's the top of the food chain. But when you look into all this stuff, and they've been talking about this island and everything for years, and now it's all coming true. And yes, I think some conspiracies are absurd, and I'm not even going to get into flat Earth and everything, how that is. But there's other things that you find out.
The Earth is round?
Yeah, exactly. But there are things that have come out in reactions later that even if it's a coincidence with some of this stuff, you have to address it. You have to change. You have to move on. It's just so many of these things right now. It's not right. And if you're offending people, you really got to back off of it. Because
do you know what? I'm resigned to the feeling that there's so many things coming out on almost a daily basis now. You kind of think to yourself, are they all true? Because they're putting it all out day by day by day. And there's so many things. Can you get to the bottom of everything before the next one comes out and distracts attention again? It's almost like they're like, let's get it all out. Let's just do it all because nobody's going to believe any of it. It's going to be so far-fetched and so mad, all these different things, that some of it might be true in the middle of it and it just disappears. Do you know?
Exactly. Yeah, no, if you say enough, random BS, it's like, there's the old joke where if you put 100 monkeys in a room and they typed on a typewriter, eventually they would type Shakespeare, because if you put enough stuff out there, eventually it would sync up and you would have some real things. There's so many conspiracies, I don't go down those rabbit holes. I've been to the famous JFK museum in downtown Dallas, and I couldn't help but you stand in the spot where the guy filmed the famous film, and then you look at where the guy shot, and then you look at it and you're just like, this doesn't make sense. But I'm not going down.
You're just like, what?
You're standing there and you're going like, is this a magic bullet? Like, he fell that way, they heard a sound. You're watching this whole thing, and it just, some things don't make sense, but other things do make sense. And you have these people that come out with stuff all the time. They make a living out of it. That is what they do.
Because it's entertaining. It is very... I do love conspiracy theories. I love going down the rabbit hole. But probably you felt this as well. You get to a certain point, you're like, I can't keep going. I can't do this. I'm losing days and weeks here. I should be doing other things. And your mind just spins around in circles. But everything seems to... something tied together and whatnot. But it is entertaining. And there's money in it. So some people are doing it just for the money.
I go down these rabbit holes all the time, and it usually ends up with a text message to a friend with, all right, don't ask why I found this out, but did you guys know? And then, of course, they always go, what rabbit hole did you get down? And the sad thing is, it's not 3 clicks. It's not 10 clicks. It's like 2 clicks. I was like, well, I wanted to know why this guy was in this movie, and then I saw a link to this, and then I saw this, and next thing you know, you're in this dark web like, so apparently this guy did this one time, and you just totally, totally forget about it.
Do you know what makes me go down it? Is that where you said about flat Earth, you start mentioning a conspiracy, which conspiracy was the whole thing about conspiracy theories was coined to put people off looking into them. It was coined as a negative phrase to stop people doing it or looking into it rather. So now, if you mentioned Epstein, like, was a guy that you named before, he got deleted from his podcast. He lost it on YouTube.
Alex Jones?
Alex Jones, that's the guy. So where he was talking about things, he's got taken off YouTube. He would talk about the Epstein thing years ago.
Years ago, he was talking about this, screaming about it.
You must be a flat earther. You must be a guy sat with your tin hat on. And it just, that's what makes me want to go down that road, because I think, well, why are you trying to put me off looking at it?
You're right. Yeah, I agree.
And even if it is bonkers, the actual reason that something's happened or the answer, what's the harm in saying it? Why not say it?
Yeah, as long as you're not losing sleep about these stuff. But it's good to have discussions. It's good to talk about it. But you just have these people, like I heard one time on a podcast, there's Sandy Hook, the terrible shooting that happened.
Yeah.
There was a conspiracy that was all fake. And there was a guy screaming from the rooftop that this is not real, this is fake, this is this. And then that guy's lost somebody that he knew as another shooting or something like that. And then he came out and was like, okay, guys, I apologize. I know what I said before, but this stuff is real. I lost, I think it was his daughter or something. He's like, I lost her, and then people came out and goes, oh, he's just that deep. He's going real deep right now. He's saying that even he doesn't believe it. It's like, a negative of a negative of a negative. I don't even know where you end up in that situation. It's insane.
It must be maddening as well, because I remember Alex Jones actually talking about that thing with Sandy Hook. He got dragged into it because he didn't actually say, he didn't say he didn't believe it happened or something?
I don't follow him that much, but I believe it was fake or not enough people there. He definitely has. He
dropped it,
minimized,
essentially.
Yeah,
but he got dragged into it, as in the news reporters were constantly saying that he was part of the reason why the family's being attacked, and people saying it's not real and all the rest of it. And then he said himself, he found out what it's like to be on the other end of a conspiracy theory, or where people are saying you are involved in something when you're not. And that must be scary.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be big enough for people to attack you. It's like, when you get hate on, when you get people who troll you online, like you have to matter for that to happen. And when you start experiencing hate, a lot of people can't take it. I personally think that's funny. Like with me and my friends, all we do is make fun of each other. It's how we joke around. And I would only be hurt if my friend was really, because a lot of times my friends say something and then usually it's followed by, a smile or something. There's a really, one of my best friends in the world. We joke around because there's this picture online that we always talk about where it has three girls sitting there. And it's the difference between guys and girls. And it has the two girls and one on the side. And the one girl looks at the other one and she goes, "Oh my God, I love your dress." And the other one says, "Yeah, oh my God, your hair is beautiful." And the girl goes, "Oh my God, thanks so much, guys." And then the next picture down is the girl walking away. And the two girls goes, "Oh, she's put on so much weight. She's getting so fat." And then you see the same meme with three guys. And the one guy turns to the other guy and goes, "Oh man, you're such an idiot." And the guy says, "Oh my God, like you suck at this sport." And the guy goes, "You guys are a bunch of jerks." And then the guy walks away and the two guys look at each other and go, "I really like that guy." He goes, "He's such a good dude." And you find that some people can't take the hate. And when you become on the other side of a conspiracy theory, when you become on the other side of hate and it's not for play, it's real, man. I mean, you go to bed and you sit around and you wonder of the negative stuff that's going to happen to you. And it's like, I don't know if you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm with Larry David, but I think it's the ninth season, one of them, he was possibly going to be attacked because he made a joke about the Iron Sheik. And the whole season is about him wearing a disguise because he is legit worried that he's going to get attacked. And when you have that type of pressure, it weighs on you. It really, really does. When your livelihood, everything you've made, everything that's, you could ever be in. I know right now I'm following Chris D'Elia. He's a famous comedian here, and he's had a bunch of women come out and say, and right now America is, now he hasn't tweeted or done anything past I'm not confirming these things. None of this stuff has happened, but you check out his Instagram and everything. There's old text messages from young girls, and apparently nothing has ever happened. But there's a lot of women that have come out and said, he tried to meet up with me. I told him I was this years old, I was underage, and he still pursued them. And America is stuck between the give women the platform and you have to believe them. It's like, innocent till proven guilty, but sometimes you're guilty till proven innocent. And then you have him coming out and being like, you have to believe a person when they're saying nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
It's very strange because with the culture of the, hashtag #MeToo, which you have to take very serious, people were able to get away with a lot more 10, 15 years ago versus nowadays. If anything ever comes out where you are inappropriate, you are done. That is it. You are a position of superior power. You slept with somebody, you did this, even if it's consensual. We're in a culture right now, at least here, that it wasn't consensual because you're the boss and you can't ask to do that.
I mean, if you're in a position, it's mainly if you're in a position of power, isn't it? Where you have the authority over somebody else to control a part of their life, which is them making money and living.
It is. And you have to really worry about that because the results are your livelihood. The results are you'll never work again. Yeah. And if you do, you have to go. It takes a long time to come back. It really does.
But then there's so many things now where there's people getting in trouble because they'll make a pass at somebody, they'll give them a compliment, stuff like that. Are you not allowed to do that anymore? I don't understand. I know that they're in a position of power still. Well, no. I suppose because if they are in a position of power, if you make that pass, there's a lot of what ifs. What if I say no? What if it? Yeah. So there is that.
Yeah, you're better off. I mean, it's like not what you say, but how you say it. For me, I have always subscribed to there's an infinite amount of women in the world. I am never going to go after anybody that one of my good friends has ever loved. If they kissed or something, whatever happens. I'm never going to cross that bridge because you don't do that to a friend. Granted, I don't work in an office situation right now with people under me. I just stay away from it. If I ever did have that, it's probably one of those, it's better off just to let it go right now. It's just, because you never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to be said. It's one person's word versus another. And the famous, it's three stories. It's mine, it's theirs, and there's the truth somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
And you just never would, unless there's a paper trail about something where, one of my good friends, he's currently living with his girlfriend. They work at a very large bank corporation here in America. They have to disclose to HR what the deal is way before they're even thinking about going on a date. They're like, I like her, she likes me, we want to go out. and then you move on, because you have to like have a paper trail of consensual being.
Yeah. I mean, that comes to where we said earlier about people being so far apart as well. You've got your left, you've got your right. Where you said about where there's lies and there's truth, and then somewhere in between. I don't want to victim shame anybody, because it shouldn't be a thing. You shouldn't shame victims for example, that person got raped. Well, look at what they were wearing. That's not an argument. There's no way an argument. No. But at the same time, I feel like we're too relaxed with the world that we live in. I think we've put our guard down, and we don't really see how dangerous the world is. And maybe because of this COVID thing and what's happening out there, look at the marches, and some turned into riots, people are getting hurt. You're not always going to be protected. So you do have to be careful. And if something does happen to you, you need to hopefully be in a position where it happened because you're in an official place, or you were meant to be there. And as horrible as it is, something unfortunate happened to you. It's not your fault, but there is a way of showing it did happen, and there's proof of it, because you can put two and two together. Whereas too many cases come up where I don't know who's telling the truth here. And then it falls on what you said, the metoo movement, where you have to believe the victim, but then look what happens to the other person who it might not have been true.
Yeah, it's really hard. And I think that's where, specifically with Chris D'Elia, again, he's a great comedian, but he is right there in the middle where he is like saying, like, this is not how it is. And you have somebody else's story right now, and you don't know what's going to happen with this stuff. And as a man, we take for granted what it's like to be on the other side of the table. I have been in many positions with women, and I'm just sitting there, and whether they get drunk or this, and it's like, I'm a good person. I have a younger sister. I have a niece. I treat women with respect. But I've been in situations where I'm thinking, like, you should not be in my apartment. You do not know me right now. I could do anything right now, and I never in a million years would disrespect somebody. I actually yelled at somebody one time because she was so drunk, and she came and she threw up all over my apartment. And I just yelled at her, like, you shouldn't even be here. You are 5'2", 100 pounds soaking wet. You have to be more careful. You don't even know my last name. You really don't. Yeah. And as a man, we are so much stronger physically, usually, of course. My girlfriend's a trained martial artist. Like, I'm not beating her up ever. But as a man, we're stronger. And being a woman, you're so vulnerable. And it really sucks. It really is just one of those things. I don't know the right answer to this. And I appreciate your podcast, because this is where maybe you can find that middle ground between what's right, what's not, what's safe, what's not, how people feel. It's really a rough area.
That's what I want on here. I want people to come on here and be able to say, now, I don't necessarily want people to come on here and say hateful things or be so far. I'm sure it'd be good for some ratings further down the line if it ever got to that stage, but it's not what the intention is. I want people to come on here with different views, conflicting views. Have an argument if you need an argument, if you feel like you need it, but you need to be open enough and not married to your own ideas where you can come to some agreement or negotiation in the middle. There is a middle ground, and you don't have to sit that side of the room, and completely disagree on everything.
Yeah, I wish you so much luck in finding people that are like that, because in my experience, it's just like sports. You get a penalty in soccer, you stand up and start arguing. In the history of soccer, or football as you call it, no referee has ever gone, you know what? You're right. Yeah. You're right. You didn't slide tackle that guy. I am taking my yellow card back. I find that when it comes to politics, you just don't have people that ever budge even a little bit. You just have this like, all right. And even rarely do you see people go, I respect your opinion. Well, okay, fine.
What if I told you we have that in football here? We now have VAR.
What, VAR?
Have you not heard of that term?
I'm not watching a boring sport. Anyways, what is VAR?
How dare you? Well, I don't watch much of it at the moment because Arsenal are absolutely terrible. But VAR has come in, and that alone has caused a lot of controversy. And where it's come from is tennis and, I believe, rugby. Because they use systems like Hawkeye. Have you heard of Hawkeye? No. So in tennis, if the ball, you know where they dispute, it's like it hits the line or it's in or it's out.
Oh, yeah.
You know where they dispute, they go to Hawkeye and it'll tell you definitively where it landed. And you only get so many times to do it. Right. So in football now, we've got VAR, where we've had incidents where the ball's hit the crossbar, gone down the line. They've argued, did it go in, did it not go in? we now have Hawkeye for football where they'll go back review it. We even have it for red cards, yellow cards, things like that.
Okay, I guess when we have that in hockey here too, and I've seen stuff like that. I guess I was just getting into more the subjective stuff of if it hit you and it didn't hit you, they try to review that. We have that here in America with basketball when a person, you know what flopping is? It's like, oh my God, you got me, and you get suspended and penalized even after the game if you get caught for something like that, even if it doesn't happen in the game. But I think it's just good to have people that can come with a neutral ground for stuff. I just think, man, it's so rare. It's so rare that you haven't. I've had conversations where I'm in the middle and I'm just trying to be like, all right, well, I said to a lady one time, you know what? We don't agree, but I respect your opinion. And she says, it's not an opinion. It's a fact. I'm giving you facts here right now.
Well, that's where they're married to their idea. And they think that's it. There is no movement from it. But do you know what's really hard to admit? And I will absolutely love when people come on here and they're so far the other way that you think, oh my God, you are so wrong. But it doesn't mean there are little bits in their ideas that aren't true or aren't right. And it's really hard for people to admit when somebody's even right on a little bit. Not the whole subject necessarily where they suddenly think, oh, I'm going to change my mind. But there are little bits of truth in there. And some people just don't want to hear it and really struggle to admit that somebody could be right about something when they disagree with them so badly. Maybe that's where we've got a problem. But we can't turn around and go, do you know what? You might be right on something. You're not right on everything. You might be right on something.
Yeah, I guess when you see here in America the far right and the far left, because I don't know if you saw this online, but like the far left, the Antifa they call themselves, the anti-fascists. You have these people wearing Old Navy who took Seattle, Washington. They took a part of the town hostage, City Hall, and they're supposed to be the liberals, and they took this hostage. And then you give that's ammunition to the other side to be like, you think that is right? It's like, no, not really. But it's better than what you're doing. It's better than it's better than this. It's better. Everything is not. It's like they judge the other side for the extreme, and it's like if you could just take that 10% on the far extreme and take a little step in, I think that's closer to the middle. The middle is to me is like the middle 60%, not the middle right in the middle. Like it's like if you divide the soccer field, the football field into three areas, a third, a third, a third. I think that middle third, the neutral zone play, that's where the game really takes place. And if we could have the opinions more in there and less at the goals, look at this. I'm making a soccer politics analogy for you.
That is a good analogy, actually.
That you need to have that middle common ground, which most people think is right down the middle. If you could open that up to like 20 to 30% of the popular opinion, we would find some neutral ground, and I think we could be better as society. But I never think that's going to happen.
You don't think?
No chance.
Well, it might never happen because this episode might get taken off in the first 5 minutes of being on. We might have mentioned some things that YouTube, Facebook and that don't like because, like I said, I'm trying to promote open free speech here with non-censorship. But I do know that some videos are being taken down just for even mentioning COVID, just for mentioning masks, just for... What else is there? There was something else that they're being taken off for straight away. As soon as you... Vaccines. And now I've said it, it will probably be gone. But as soon as you mention it, it's gone. It's gone.
But listen, it's a podcast. You're going to get an audio thing. There's other platforms to put your ideas out there. And all of our listeners, Anne, and maybe even Karen, they got to hear this hour of my, thoughts and definitely some of yours.
Karen, if you're listening, come on here and argue with me. Do you know what? Thank you so much for coming on here. This has been an absolute pleasure. I know you're a bit time sensitive because you're going to go and be manipulated and tortured by a woman in a moment.
That sounds like I'm going to a dominatrix. No,
it sounds fun. Whatever you're going to go do, it sounds fun.
Oh my God, I'm like the most meat and potato guys ever. But yeah, no, I thank you for having me be a guest right now. I really appreciate that. I think this is really good. I'll listen to it back, and we'll be in touch. If you ever need me, you let me know. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I'll speak to you again soon.
All right, buddy. Cheers.
Bye.
See ya.
That was fantastic. So for the first episode there, like you said, we're here to talk to the public, get real public opinion. That was our first guest on our first show, so it was a good way to get a contrasting opinion from across the pond. If you do want to appear on the podcast, all you have to do is message us during the broadcast saying voice in capitals. We'll bring you on, have a conversation with you, and you can stay on for as long or as short as you like and give us your opinions. You won't be censored, you won't be shut down, but there may be conflicting ideas. Well, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.